The new Birdhouse by MidNite Solar. What this is your user interface for the disconnecting combiner boxes, also by MidNite Solar. What this does is it's designed obviously on your old style fire pull box, and functionally it's about the same. It's your intermittent smoke and flames emergency sort of disconnect for your system. You simply open up this door, give you a large friendly red button which you can then push. Pushing the button will activate the Birdhouse, and it'll disconnect the combiner. It'll then tell you the solar is off, and it will speak to you in clear, plain English and tell you that the PV array is off and that there are no lethal voltages present below the array level. So what we're going to do here is just go ahead and install the guts of the thing on the side of the building here next to our MNPV6 Disco micro version, which is his AC disconnect from his Fronius inverter. This is now going to interface with our DC disconnect, our MNDC4 that we just put up, and allow us to have a fully integrated safety system. So this just is going to mount right to the wall here. The Birdhouse construction, by the way, is anodized aluminum and genuine high density plastic. Won't rust, crust, corrode, or otherwise degrade. And this little critter just slides right on the front. Just like that. Okay, now that we've got all our conduits in place, we are ready to pull our MidNite Solar 600 volt custom 90 degrees C rated USC2 jacketed Cat 5 cable, which is what you need for connecting the Birdhouse to the combiner box, and allows you to not only run it across a rooftop where it's exposed, but it lets you put it into the combiner box with the high voltage PV wiring, because it carries the same 600 volt 90 degrees C rating as the cabling. You don't have to run our Cat 5 cable in any separate conduits. It can run right in there with the high voltage wiring safely and code compliant. Here we have the MidNite Solar Birdhouse's power supply. This converts 120 to 240 volts, 50-60 hertz AC into 38 volts DC, which is needed by the Birdhouse to not only run all of its functions at night, when of course there's no solar available, but also the 38 volts is important because the Birdhouse uses the difference between what it's seeing from the AC power supply and from the power supply that's up on the combiner box to be able to tell whether it's day or night. And it changes its functionality based on whether it is, of course, day or night with the PV system. What you get here is a nice aluminum box, and inside you've got a little circuit board which has terminals for your AC input. If you're going to hardwire this, you've got knockouts here on the bottom, and you can run a conduit up into it, run AC, preferably non-switched, into the AC input, and then you've got, of course, your two terminals for DC output. All this thing really is a small AC outlet here. It's a receptacle that's mounted to the board, and a little plug to plug your wall wart power supply. Now the wall wart is just this little guy here. It's a custom 38 volt power supply that MidNite has made, and that simply inserts into the back of the board. So what you're looking at there in the box is this, with this little plug that scorpions up and plugs into the bottom. So with a normal installation, you're going to hardwire it from the conduit entrance and do it that way. We're doing it a little bit differently here. The back of the box, this one's already installed on the wall, and it's plumbed up with its conduits to the Birdhouse, which is on the other side of the wall here. And we've got our AC 38 volt cabling installed already. And what we've done is, using the 2-inch knockout in the back, you can put it right over an existing wall outlet and basically use it to replace the cover plate. So in this case, what you do is just plug your wall wart right into the outlet inside, and because we're not going to use this AC outlet, we can go ahead and clip it off. Just clip the wires there, just pop it right out of the board, and that gives you a little bit extra space behind it because the transformer is now back there pointing the other direction. So you just put your board on there, screw screw it on down. Okay, now you simply take your little wall wart power supply plug, run it up, plug it in there, and we're ready to connect our AC 38 volt wiring, I'm sorry, DC 38 volt wiring from the AC adapter to the Birdhouse. We got DC positive down here on the bottom. Just insert the wire, tighten the screw down. Same for the negative. That's got that. Install your cover. And that's all there is to the Birdhouse power supply. Okay, well, we've got our Cat 5 cable up here into our pull box, and we've got to get it into our combiner box. There's a couple ways we could do this. If we had a larger conduit here, say 3/4 or 1 inch, we could simply run it right in with the high voltage cabling to get it across. But since the Birdhouse comes with 2 watertight 1/2 inch strainer reliefs, which are conveniently sized for our Cat 5 cable to give you a waterproof entry, we're going to go ahead and use those, both because we've got them and because we're too lazy to change the conduit out at this point. There we go. Bring him around in here to the other side. Because we recommend that you bring the Cat 5 cable into these boxes, run them up next to the left-hand side of the fuse holders, and then up to the board. You can see I've got too much in here already. So if we sort of start from there, it's going to be about that much. The excess cable can be coiled up in your junction box to be used later. Now we're going to try to put an end on this thing. Okay, well, what we're going to do here now is go ahead and assemble the end to our Cat 5 cable, and it uses just a standard Cat 5 cable connector available at Home Depot or anywhere, and standard Cat 5 cable crimping tool. Then you just put that into your Cat 5 crimping tool, give it a squish, and that's all there is to that. It's all nicely in and tied down. Then you can slide your heat shrink back up there, and that's just to protect this joint between the beige cable and the black cable. Okay, we've got our heat gun here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and shrink this tubing down over the end of the cable. This shrink tubing does have a little bit of hot melt glue inside of it, so that when you heat it up, the glue will squish out and go ahead and seal that little seam between the black sheath and the beige inner sheath, just to give it a little extra protection from moisture getting into the cable. So that's got that about right. Now, when you're making this cable, of course, the color code for from pin 1 to pin 8 is, of course, to be found on the assembly drawing that comes with the Birdhouse and with the combiner box. So that'll tell you what the color codes are. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off our array. Oh, array's off. Okay, good. So I'm just going to bring this up here, plug it right into the power supply board, and then just dress that cable right down the side next to the fuse holder. That's the best place for it. Across the bottom of the box. I'm going to tighten down our strain reliefs, make them watertight. There we go. And then we simply install our dead front cover. And our outer cover. Turn it back on. We're ready to rock. Okay, we've got our Birdhouse carcass mounted to the wall as such, and What we've done is gone ahead and brought a conduit in from the back. You do have the option also of bringing the conduit in from the bottom, of course. We went for the back so we get a nice clean look here on the outside wall. And there's just a few things you need to do for the birdhouse before you go ahead and close it up. The first thing you'll want to do, there's a small black 2-pin jumper here on the board. You just want to go ahead and place that over the
combiner
2
circuit
pins.
breaker is open.
And that indicates that the combiner circuit breaker is open. The battery
The system is ready.
the battery is charged. Chatty little guy. And it's telling us that the breaker is open here with the indicator light and everything's all ready to go. So that was just it booting up and telling us what the status was of all the connections. The breaker is open, of course, because the combiner box isn't actually plugged into it right now. But what we're going to do first is we're going to connect the power supply leads from the AC power supply over here to this terminal on the far left-hand side. And what this does is provides the power for it during the night when the PV array is not active. Our primary power supply for the whole safety system is, of course, up at the rooftop combiner box and feeds power back down to keep all this going. There's a third form of power supply up here at the top. We've got a set of backup batteries so that in the case of, say, a fire at 1 o'clock in the morning, the fire department's going to come out. The first thing that they're trained to do, turn off the power to the building to make it safe. Well, in order to make this safe, you're going to turn off the power to the PV system by hitting this button. The battery backup is going to take over and go ahead and turn it off. The battery is good for 24 or more hours with no solar and no AC power supply connected. So you're pretty good there. Now what we got to do is take our Cat 5 cable here, and it can go to one or the other of these jacks. And then you just tuck that cable in out of the way. We've got our jumper on, we've got our power supply connected, and then got our Cat 5 cable, so we're ready to put the cover on. Just get him lined up with the LEDs. And then you've got your screws here. These are just a flathead screw, stainless steel screw. There's a small red O-ring at the shank. You want to make sure that's in place before you put the screws back in, because that allows us to have a nice watertight seal for the screw holes. And the other last thing you're going to do after you've put all the screws in the cover is you're going to go ahead and just put a little bead of sealant right where the birdhouse meets the wall. And that's just to keep any water from running down behind it and, you know, getting in, collecting underneath behind the thing. So we'll go ahead and put the rest of the screws in here. Okay, that's got those taken care of. And the system is now telling us the solar panels are off, which is the position we left them in out there, and that it's all ready to go. So in order to use the birdhouse, you simply open the door, push the button, and that's all there is to it.